Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm delighted to be here today with Richard Millington. I discovered Richard through his Substack, which is Indispensable Consulting, and we'll include a link in the show notes. I really admire his thinking and writing about consulting, and I've been following him for a while. Not too long ago, I shared one of his posts in the newsletter I send out, and I think from that, about 80 people subscribed to Richard's newsletter, Substack, which I super recommend. And then, Richard and I got talking, and I'm so delighted that he's on the show today. So, Richard, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me here and for promoting my newsletter last week. Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
And we're going to get to, Richard, to your consulting practice, Fever which is very distinctive practice focused on building online communities. I know that you work with some of the major tech companies on both user communities as well as internal employee kind of communities, and we'll get to that. I want to hear about your own practice, but let's start with your Substack. Tell us a little bit about the story behind how you started writing these posts. I think you started by just emailing, answering questions from friends about consulting, and that kind of expanded. Tell us that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been running my consultancy practice since 2009, I think was when it began, or 2010 officially. So I've been writing about the same thing, these communities for decades at this point. And then after the pandemic, there were a lot of layoffs in the technology space because they overhired. And I had all these people that were coming to me and asking me for advice on how to become a consultant. They're being laid off or changing their careers. And they know me in my space. So, like, hey, what should I charge? What does a contract look like? How do I get started? And how do I attract my first clients? And I was finding I was writing these really long like emails back because I felt like I had so much information to share because I've made so many mistakes and I'm trying to make sure these people don't make the same mistakes. And at some point, I don't remember exactly when, this light bulb just went off my head. We're like, why am I just writing this for one person? Why don't I just publish this in Substack and start sending the links? Because surely that makes a lot more sense. And then that's what I began doing, I think, in April 2023. And then the audience just began growing. People began reaching out to me for some coaching and mentoring support, which is great to have. And it's become this really nice, like, side hustle for me where I get to reflect upon what I'm doing. And honestly, all the time, like, it's interesting to think, okay, what have I learned today? What have I learned from this project I've worked on? What have I learned from this mistake? And being able to reflect upon it and craft it into something that might be useful for somebody else. So it's been an absolute joy to do. And I find the Substack community so pleasant compared to almost any other domain that's out there, compared to LinkedIn or Twitter or anything. There's something quite nice about Substack. And hopefully that statement will age well.
So, tell us a little bit about some of your. Actually, you know what? Let me change the question. Before I jump into that, you mentioned that you do, kind of community consulting, and we'll get into that, second half of the show, but just briefly define what that is. Some people may not know what we're talking about when you talk about sort of user communities or employee communities. So just kind of define terms a little bit. What are the types of communities that you help clients, set up or improve?
Yeah, to be fair, no one knows what I'm talking about ever. Going to any networking event for me is absolute hell. It's very simple to think about it. I'd say most of my work, about half the work, is building communities for customers in the technology space, which is very niche or niche, as you say in the US. But essentially, it means that I help companies build communities where, let's say, if your iPhone breaks, you might go to the Apple community, you ask a question, you get an answer from another customer that's had that problem in the past. And that means that a customer support rep doesn't have to answer that. So it saves Apple a huge amount of money, especially when you start multiplying this by the tens and thousands of questions that could be resolved in a community and the average cost of a support call. So a lot of the work has been figuring out how do we set up the technology side of that to work well? And then how do you motivate people to essentially work for free? Like, no one comes back home from a hard day of the office and wants to do unpaid customer support. But in communities, they absolutely do that all the time. And so you need to understand the psychology really, really well. You need to understand the right incentive structure for people to do it. You have to avoid all the legal landmines that can come with building a community today. And so when people hire me, it's very often they want the strategy, they want the technology, they want the processes. And then often they want to make sure they're hiring the right team that can do it well.
How do you motivate people? I was going to ask you that. Like, how do you motivate people to answer, oh, you need to update to the latest iOS and then go to settings and do this and this? Why do people spend their time answering those questions?
I love this question so much. So I've met people, especially in my space, especially senior executives, I would say, who are unable to get their head around the idea that people might want to help other people for something other than money. But if you think about it, if someone stops you on the street and asks you, what time is it? You're going to give them the answer. You're like not being paid for it, but you
You're
want to
like,
be
that'll be
like, "Yeah,
$5.
right. Could you imagine a world where that was the case? That's like a Black Mirror episode right there. Um, but people genuinely want to help. They want to feel like they've had an impact. People want to feel useful. And so, yes, you can go into the world of tangible rewards and figure out what you can give them and swag and all that. And gamification can be a part of it. People answer the most questions and get badges, rewards. That's not the biggest thing. The biggest thing by a long, 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 long way is making people feel useful. So, what people want when they do these things, where they are on the Apple community or the HP community, answering questions about printers that no one has used in like 5 years, is they want to know they've genuinely helped someone. Like, you have situations that someone will be like, hey, I'm going on my honeymoon tomorrow. I need to print out this documentation at home, but my printer isn't working. Can anybody help? Everyone wants to help that person because they want to know that, oh, I've really, really felt good about myself. So a lot of what I do is help is paying people in something that money can't buy. That feeling of being unique, useful, and special. And that might be through the space of, hey, why don't we bring our top customers together who've answered the most questions and find a way to get them connected with the company so they can answer better questions? Why don't we give them unique roles within the community? Why don't we just help them do everything they can to feel good and special and important? And that has nothing to do with money. It has
Mm,
everything to do with the feeling of being appreciated, being respected. And these are things that are so important, but I think in the modern world are often lost because we think of things in a very transactional way. And
mm,
the funny thing is, once you put a financial incentive in the mix, the community can blow up because people want to be paid more than someone else. They want to get like, and then it's just customer support, but you're paying people a lot less, and it just doesn't really work. So the magic is really designing systems where people feel recognized, important, where they feel they have a certain status within that community that they're earning. These kind of things matter so much more.
amazing. Okay, so now let's talk about your Substack a bit when we'll get back to
Sure.
the community consulting and that world of that. So, what have some of the most popular posts been that you've written? And I'd particularly love to hear about any that have been popular, like surprised you because they maybe were more popular than you expected. Some those are always interesting.
Ah, there's such an interesting mix. I think I can actually get the list of the most popular posts, but the thing, ones that I like the most are never the ones that are most popular with the audience. Let me just bring it up here because I actually do think I know which one is most popular.
Well,
It's
maybe tell us
one I
about the ones that,
published.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'll say like the most popular ones according to the audience and the ones I love the most. So the most popular one, which really surprised me, is a post I wrote called "The goal of your consulting website is to display as many trust signals as possible." And it's a post I wrote where it came from the fact when people subscribe to my newsletter, what a lot of people don't realize is I often just look them up. I'm curious who they are. I look up their website, if their email address has a website domain. And I was looking up like domain after domain after domain of all these individual consultants that are out there today. And their websites were I'm trying to think of the right word, but awful. They were very badly designed, or they were pamphlet style sites. They didn't have any depth to them, and they weren't achieving anything that they're supposed to achieve. And I think a lot of the problem with becoming a consultant is that people have a lot of expertise. Maybe they used to work for a big consulting firm, or they were high up in a tech firm or whatever, but they have very little idea of how to attract clients. They haven't had that background yet, and it shows. So I wrote this post about the trust signals that you need to have in a community, and I talked about first The worst type of proof is these self-assertive claims, things that you're saying that you're good at, your point of view, your process, your methodology. Then let's talk about the weak signals. Like this is the the basic tier, like anonymous testimonials, videos, logo walls. Then I talked about the reputation signals that are out there, which is where you get third party recognition. So social proof, media mentions, awards, any accreditations or affiliations. And then there are the results signals, like can you actually prove what you've done? So testimonials with an actual name, with the specifics, a local wall with the actual scopes or the actual artifacts that you've created for that client or mini case studies. And then at the very top tier, I talked about verified proof, video testimonials with a client saying, this is what I did, this is how good it was, full case study, third party reviews of what you've done. And it's one of many posts I wrote, but I think something about it really just lit a spark. Maybe because so many people just recognize that their websites aren't that good yet. And so this was a kick in the ass that they needed. But that one by far was the most popular thing I've ever written. And other things like when I have a hot take, like where consulting is not selling your expertise, I mean, that did really well. When I said you only need to engage 50 people to be a success, that did well. When I said clients aren't buying you, they're buying your story. A lot of it is skewed towards the marketing side. And I think that's genuinely being really interesting to me.
I remember reading the one about trust signals on websites. That was back in September. Excellent post.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, excellent post. So tell us about some of the ones that maybe you've been particularly proud of that they didn't necessarily become, the most popular out there, but have there other ones that you felt like you really came to some realization writing it or that you thought was particularly helpful to others?
I think the one where I broke down the different types of consulting that exist and connected it with the types of different deliverables you might create. Because when I think about the business consultants I've coached and worked with, I think a lot of it falls into six buckets really. So it's helping the client decide what to do, helping them understand how to do it, building their ability to do it, doing it better if they're doing it already, avoiding mistakes, and then proving or showing the results.
Mm.
And when I was connecting that to the deliverables of each one, I think that clicked for me and helped crystallize a lot of my thinking at the time. So I was very proud of that. I think that was really, really interesting for me to do. So I quite liked that. Um, I'm trying to think what else. I like some of my posts right at the beginning where I was showing what a contract looks like. Because I feel like a lot of the talk or the newsletters I read, they don't actually share the specifics of what is a contract. What does it break down into? What should be in it? What should you watch out for before you're signing one? And honestly, it's one of the least popular posts I've written ever. But for me, I felt there isn't a lot of advice about what that actually looks like as well. So I think that was a really important one for me to write. I think another one about niche selection. So what's happening with a lot of people as coaching is they were getting stuck thinking, oh, should I put this niche, or should I do SaaS startups or e-commerce? And I think having a framework there where they can think about, okay, have you worked in that space before? Do you have a lot of connections in that space? Do you have the credibility in that space? Is there a lot of competition in that space? Like these kind of things I felt were really, really useful to have in there. So those are the ones that stand out for me. But often the things that I think are going to be popular aren't. And the things I'm most proud of don't resonate much. There's another one actually. One that I quite liked and resonated was, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but I think it's called something like "Don't trust people like these." And it came from this one person on LinkedIn. And I don't want to just pick on this one person, but it's representative of a lot of folks that are out there making these huge claims about, oh, just do this, you'll make all this money, like just raise your rates, like all this kind of like stuff. And it really bugged me because I felt the advice was really bad. I felt the idea, just raise your rates. Yeah, sure, that's how it works. Just charge more, like simple. But this kind of advice gets bandied about there all the time. And he's talking about how much money he had made. And I don't know why, but it triggered me in a way that no one else has. And so in the UK, you can look up how much each company has. Like it's public record. You can look up any private company in the UK, which is what I did. And it turned out he was like 50 grand in debt. And I was like, well, is this the kind of advice that you want to follow? And then I shared it like my bank accounts, and I shared also like links to where I've shared exactly what I've earned in my first 5 years, what I've earned from my books. I try to be quite transparent about it. It's all the information on there. So I got the biggest response from that in terms of the messages that I received more than anything else, I think. Yeah.
How do these posts come about? Are there things that you have been kind of thinking about for a while? Do you have a some kind of Evernote or Apple Notes where you kind of kernels occur to you and you ponder them for a while, or do you just sort of sit down and say, okay, what is my post today about, and then just crank the whole thing out?
I think this ties into a bigger question. I think a lot of people, when they become consultants, they decide to take the publishing route to attract clients, to attract attention.
Mm.
The problem with that is that it takes a huge amount of time to pay off. Like, you might be publishing into the void for half a year before it really gains traction or something like that. And I think I've shared my own story about how I attracted my first clients on the newsletter as well. And so for me, it's important you have a process and a routine. And for me, it's the first hour of every day is when I sit down, and for an hour, I'm either working on the graphics or a post. In terms of generating ideas, what it used to be I'd mix it up with like one personal story and then one kind of advice post, and just kind of alternate between the two. And I was noticing more and more like my personal stories weren't resonating as much. I guess I'm not as interesting as I thought I was. I found that I would reflect upon what I'd recently done and see what the general message or what I'd learned from it. I would think back to situations I'd had in the past and think, what did I learn from those situations? Like I shared one I really liked a while back, how I lost like 70 grand by not knowing how to negotiate well and by following bad negotiating advice, actually. And so I look at what, people I'm coaching say as well. What are they struggling with? What are the common themes? What I'm moving towards now is having like a theme for a couple of months, that leads into like a program that I'm running. So there's a lead up to it. So there's a clear point of all of it. Yeah. So I think now it's going to be like 3 or 4 themes a year and then just exploring that and then moving on to the next theme. I have an idea of what I'm going to do like this year, but as you can imagine, it's a theme, the sub points. And I look very specifically for when I have an opinion that differs from a lot of what I see out there. Like
Mm.
I've read a lot of the consulting books and Alan Weiss and all those folks who in some ways are really good, but in some ways I think the advice is outdated today. I look for areas where I'm like, where am I breaking ground that I don't see elsewhere? Where do I disagree with what a lot of people believe? Where am I going against the grain? I really like those kinds of posts.
Tell me a little bit about areas where you do kind of just where you feel that you have a differentiated point of view versus the standard consulting advice.
Yeah, so there's a few that come up. One I mentioned already, like this idea, just raise your. I
Uh-huh.
see it all the time. Like, yeah, there is some logic to it, and I understand, but that is catnip for consultants. It's what we want to hear, so we share it and we like it, and that promotes it even more and more. But the reality is, like, your pricing, the fees that you set is part of your strategy. And charging more means you have a different strategy, means you're going after a different caliber of client. And once you go above, say, 50K for a project, that's where you get into a request for proposal. And if you're a solo consultant, your odds of winning that diminish rapidly because you go up against like the bigger firms, the people that have teams. And so you got to be smart about what do you want to charge and what kind of project are you going to deliver for that. If you are charging, I don't know, 50 to 70K, that's probably going to be a highly customized project as a solo consultant on multiple things that you're delivering. But I know people that are earning more than a million a year doing these turnkey projects at 1 to 5 grand a pop. And so there's no perfect model, but it's more like everything has to align. If you're charging this amount, then you've got to provide this kind of service and target this kind of client and make sure you can actually compete at that level. And so very often I have people that reach out to me and be like, hey, what should I charge? Or my favorite one, what do you charge? And for me, that's, well, if you want to compete against me, then yeah, charge what I charge. But I don't want to be rude. I've been doing this a long time. I've got a lot of connections. I know how to sell at the enterprise level. I know how to today negotiate with the different teams and departments. Like, I've learned all these skills and to tell a story. If you don't, then you should find your own niche and not charge at that level, because you'll get there eventually, but that might not be where you want to be today. And so this advice of just raise your rates, no, you've got to be a lot more strategic in that. I had a whole pricing guide that I published as well, actually, which I feel like the different buckets like are so important to know, like what sandpit you're playing in, because the rules are completely different, and you don't want to go too low, but the very high end, you don't usually as a solo consultant want to be dealing with requests for proposals, RFPs, because that's a huge amount of time, a 1 in 4 chance of winning, 1 in 5 chance of winning. Like, it's not the best use of your time. So you have to decide what game you're playing, and everything has to align. Your marketing has to align with that. And I think one of the other things that really annoys me a lot about the advice I see is this idea that you should play a game of guess the highest number a client is willing to pay. Like, I see this all a lot where we see this advice where, okay, when it comes to naming your fee, name the highest number that you dare and then shut up and wait for the client to speak first. And this is such crazy, outdated advice. I cannot believe it's still around there, because A, you're going to get a lot of clients that have sticker shock and you've just wasted all your time. So what was the point in that? My approach is, let's begin with a broad range, which is on my website today. You can see what the broad range is. And once I learn more about you, I can give you a narrower and narrower range. And so there's a process, there's a graphic I have on my website somewhere where I show exactly what it goes through. So that range might begin like pretty broad. It might begin at a level of, okay, let's begin between 15 and 50K. Like, that gets you in the ballpark to possibly work with me. And once I learn more, I'm like, okay, this sounds more like a 25K to 35K project. And at each point, the client or the prospect knows what range they're working within. So I never spend a huge amount of time working on a proposal that's rejected because of the price. It just doesn't happen because the client's already approved the price along the journey. But I often see advice like, oh, just name a fee once you've agreed everything else, or the value-based fees. I'm sure most of your audience has heard about that. This is, in my opinion, the biggest load of crap that gets banded around today. The idea that if a project in the future might earn 10 million for the client, that you can charge 1 million and that's what you're worth. The obvious problem with this is that you have competitors. If you charge 1 million and your competitor charges 100 grand, you're going to lose. There's just no way you're going to win that. Second, you shift all the risk onto the client. Like, if it doesn't work, you still get paid, but the client, like, and so many issues with these things. I think it's a lot easier to know what a reasonable figure is, use that zero in approach, and just know what bucket you're playing in, because then you never have that sticker shock and everything's aligned. You're not trying to guess the highest number. It's less stressful. So yeah, that comes up a lot. There's probably more things as well, but I think those are the biggest things that occur to me.
Now, one of the biggest, or one of the questions that I hear most often is from people who are entering this world: how do I find clients? Talk to me about some of your thinking around that.
I think you've got to find the right acquisition approach for you. I mean, everything has to be aligned. So you have to first, like, let's assume you've got the most important things sorted out already, because there are certain like critical decisions you have to get right. So the first one is, have you selected the right niche? You know, which group of companies are you going to serve? And then it's, which of the problems of those companies are you going to solve? And then, are you offering the right service to solve that problem? And then, are you charging the right fee? Those are the 4 critical steps that come before this, right? And if you get any of them wrong, it's a lot more difficult to attract clients. You can attract attention by doing a lot of interesting things, but attracting clients, first you make sure you have to have the right niche. You have to make sure you're solving a problem that's worth solving, a problem that they spend a lot of money on, a problem that a lot of companies face, a problem that you have some expertise in. Then you have to make sure you have the right service, because there's many different ways to have different services to the same issue. Get the pricing right. Then this is the point where we think about, okay, how do we attract clients? What is the right acquisition channel for you? And in my mind, there's 6 ways you can attract clients today. One is by search, search engine optimization. You publish, you put yourself out there, and search drives traffic to you. That doesn't work anywhere near as well as what it used to because of how search is changing today. So I'm more reluctant to recommend that, but it worked for me for years and years. Two is that you rely on the algorithms. So this is where you publish content that's shared by others and gets recommended in the streams of others. This is very different from content designed for search because you're aiming to create something unique, which packs that emotional punch that someone is going to share it. It used to be in the past you'd churn out how-to guide after how-to guide, and that would get mentioned in search, and that's how you grow an audience. Now it's more like you have to have like a take, an opinion, something that's going to get people to want to share it. And if it's just the same how-to guide, that doesn't resonate at all. But when I share something like consulting is not selling your expertise, well, there's people that are going to share that because it matches their worldview today. So the way you create content for algorithms is different. And we can be angry about that, but it's you have to decide which game to play.
Mm.
Three is via referrals. This is where you bet on your current clients and your audience recommending others. It's interesting how many consultants don't have a referral program of their own. Like often they will recommend that their clients do it, but they'll rarely have a program of their own.
What do you mean by program of their own?
Where if someone recommends you a client, you'll give them 5% of that client or 10% of that client. It creates a
Yeah.
great incentive for people to recognize you. It does create some issues you've got to resolve. What if two people recommend you the same person? What if they're recommending someone that's in your sales process already? But yeah, generally, like, why would you not have one? Like, what? There's no reason not to do it. The last three, networking to reach the key decision makers. This is what I talked about in my last post, where if you only have 50 people you're trying to reach, like 50 people that are the key people at the organizations you want to work with, then show up to events where they're going to be, write content specifically for them, network with the people around them. You can quickly get to where you want to be. Fifth is the advertising route. Pay for social ads, advertising, promote yourself, build an audience. This works really well when combined with content. Like I tried it on my Substack as well. So I had 2,000 subscribers after a year. I used social ads for a couple of months. Now I'm at 15,000. So that approach can work really, really
Wow.
well, but
Really?
it costs money.
Yeah. What
you
did
know,
it end up
um,
costing you roughly per new subscriber, per thousand subscribers? How did, you know,
I think it
ru-
was $1.5. Let me see. I published this on my post as well.
huh.
So I published after the first 10 grand, and that took me up to around 5,000 subscribers, maybe a little bit higher. So I probably spent like 15 to 20 grand. Uh, Cost per subscriber, like again, like you can see all of the links on my newsletter. The cost per subscriber tended to be, yeah, the best ad was around £1.25, and we're testing a lot because I also paid a firm to run the ad campaign. So maybe 1.5 US, 1.6 US, somewhere around that, but it varied a lot. But it's expensive, but it's a shortcut. Like it can
Yeah.
save you a lot of time to build an audience,
And
like
this was a campaign that you ran on Substack?
this is a social ads campaign where we use Facebook, Instagram. I think that was it. I didn't really explore like Twitter or LinkedIn or Reddit, although I'm told those are good channels.
Oh, okay.
But Facebook especially is quite effective. You can see the actual ads I ran as well on the post I just shared.
Facebook. No kidding.
Um,
Okay.
Cold outreach as well is an option. I personally don't like it, but if you have some mastery and have a turnkey process at the lower level for attracting clients at the sub 5K level, then I think cold outreach can especially work. But I'm always amazed at all these lead gen folks on LinkedIn that will message me or they'll spam me and be like, hey, can you accept 10 more clients? I'm like, what are you doing? Like, and also, it's going to sound, I don't know how it's going to sound, but it's not going to sound great. But my client list includes a lot of the top tech firms. Do you think any of them came through a cold outreach message? I've never done a cold outreach message in my life. That's not how I think it should work. But the key thing about all these is that you've got to pick one method and commit to it. That you've really got to understand if you're going to pick the algorithms, and you've got to master that. If you're going to pick search, you've got to master that. If networking is your thing, you can master that. One of my competitors, like, she drives me crazy because she's so connected to all the other people that are out there in the space by the former company that she worked at. And that networking is great. Meanwhile, I'm publishing like crazy. So it's different strokes for different folks, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to find the one that you're comfortable with and that you're willing to commit to. Like if networking is your thing, then you might want to spend like 50% of your time doing that. I used to do these tours of the US where I'd fly to the USA, I'd reach out to people on my mailing list, arrange meetups, drinks, coffee, and have maybe 40 meetings in like a 2 week spell. And it's expensive to do that, different cities, but it paid off in a big, big way.
Let's talk about your consulting practice a bit. I'd love to hear a little bit more about giving some additional examples of the type of consulting project you would do for a company that wants to either start a community or, improve the way one is running.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you like real examples, but I won't share the names just to
No,
respect
no, keep it sanitized, of course.
privacy. So if I think about a recent client based in Las Vegas, they were launching a community, their company that's growing. They've just reached that point where they keep growing, their customer support costs are going to be huge. And they've heard about this community thing. Maybe they've heard about it from some event or something else. So they search around, they find me, and they know what it is, but they don't even have any idea where to begin. And so I think for a lot of consultants, the really good thing to get really good in is the technology, the people, and the processes that make these things work. So companies are really scared of making a mistake. Like, and in companies, I don't even like referring to as companies because they're made up of people, but people are on the hook for achieving certain goals within a certain time frame, right? And so when they hire me, I'm not just selling the solution. I'm selling that they're going to look good to their boss. They're going to get the right decisions. They're going to hit their targets in the right time frame. And so that's what they want. I don't want to use that peace of mind, but it is a part of it. And so usually I will help them with the strategy they need to use, getting internal support, internal buy-in. I will highlight how to set up the technology and even which platform to pick. So we might go through the process of looking at different RFPs, which is what I've been doing with clients recently, selecting the right platform, getting people to set it up like the right way, and then having a launch plan. So the 30, 60, and then 90 days, what needs to be done at each stage, and then providing the training that they need to go through that and make that a success. And the great thing now is I have training courses that I've recorded, so they're on demand. So I can often just add them for free to win the client, or I can sell them as a separate thing. So that's an example, like launching a community from scratch. Doesn't happen as often as it used to, but it used to be most of my work. But these days, most of the brands that want a community have one already. So a lot of it is improving the communities they have, like proving the return on investment of that community, or they want to improve the level of engagement and participation of that community. And this begins with benchmarking where the community is at the moment, really understanding what the problem is, who does it affect, how severe is that issue, what are the root causes of it, who else has solved it in that industry as well. So when we get a client, I often ask around and see what other people had dealt with this issue, how they've solved it. So when I come to the client, I have a huge amount of knowledge about what's worked well elsewhere and what hasn't worked elsewhere. And I think one of the really important reasons to pick a niche is that you get to know a lot of people in that niche that can help you when you need it. You will help them too. You'll give a lot of your time to help them, but they can help you in these situations. Then there's a problem statement I'll usually create. And then we start designing what the deliverable is going to look like. There's usually multiple options here, but very often I will look at what is the core issue they're trying to solve. Let's say reducing churn of customers in the trial period. How much do they know about the solutions already? Because this will tell me whether I need to educate them on what the possible solutions are or not. What time and resources do they have? What is the situation of the people I'm working with? Are they very busy and they just want me to handle it? Or do they want to be intimately involved? And then what's happening in the environment? Are there other factors to consider here? And based upon that, I'll put together what the deliverables will look like. And then we go through the process, like the roadmap, the Gantt chart, roles, responsibilities, vendors, the costs. Then we implement the solution. And I think the thing that makes great consultants stand out more than anything else is they can make their recommendations last. They can really understand, like, within the organization, they're not just dropping a bunch of deliverables on you and hoping that those deliverables work. They can actually get into the real crux of the culture and the people and understand how to make their recommendations last. And so very often that's a combination of learning from past successes, evaluating the culture through interviews, observations, and then thinking, okay, how do I change the habits? Like, when are people going to perform this new behavior or use this new tool? What is the accountability we're setting up between each other? What are some short term wins to build the motivation? How do we align the incentives with what we need the people to do, and how we get senior support as well? And so much of success, I think, is the psychology side. And I think a lot of consultants, because they're only on the hook for the deliverables, they think that's the only thing that matters. And it's so much more worth it to go the extra mile, do the extra work to really make sure that, hey, this is a win, because then we get the testimonials and references, and it's easier to attract more clients.
You mentioned your courses. Talk to us a bit about some of the courses that you have published.
Yeah, sure. Courses are really interesting. I did my first course in 2011. So initially there was an ebook I was going to write to, promote, get more attention. And my friend Matt in the USA actually said, this should be a course. I was like, an online course? I'm not going to do an online course. That doesn't seem like a good use of time. But he persuaded me and actually flew out there and worked with him on it for a while. And we launched this course, which at the time, honestly, it wasn't a great course. It's a bunch of PDF documents and some, I don't know if there's any live component at all, actually. But I think we had like 30 people that signed up for it, and we ended up making, don't know how much, 30 to 50 grand from that first course. And I was like, wow, this is something. This I didn't know there was a market here. I don't know, for some people that would be like no money at all, but for me that's a lot of money. Especially back then. Like, I was like, wow, this is something. And so then I began doing like video recordings, of course. And videos are great because you can chop them up and use them in different ways. So it's not just a video for the course. I can use that for social media. I can use it to as lead gen. I can use it to promote things. So I began doing like video courses and targeting it at the beginner level, intermediate, and advanced. And what I found is that people like to feel like they've gone through the process and gotten to an advanced level. I mean, I take courses as well because I'm keen to always improve my skill set, but they want that sense of completion.
Uh,
So now we have a range of courses at different levels, and they do pretty well. Like, on-demand courses are an option, but they don't do anywhere near as well as a course as part of a cohort of people.
hmm.
Like, this is the date you have to join by. This is the date you have to complete it by. The completion rates of those courses are so much higher. So
Huh.
I'm much more a fan of that. Like, the on-demand ones I have because sometimes people just want to do things in their own time, and it's extra revenue, but which without too much work, and that's always nice. And it's something that I can give away as part of a client package, and I can use it as lead gen for my mailing list, and I can also get these courses sponsored as well. So one of my courses, I think, was sponsored for like 20 or 30 grand, and so that vendor gets all their customers on that course. So there's lots of opportunities with on-demand courses, but for me, the real joy is like the cohort-based ones, where it's a combination of videos, live sessions, workshops, and resources. And usually over 6 weeks, around 750 US is kind of like the market I charge. It varies, but somewhere around that level.
Hmm. And what are the topics of these on-demand courses? I mean, not on-demand, but of the synchronous live courses that you've taught.
Yeah, so traditionally there was the one successful community management. It's kind of like my bigger, popular, open public sponsored course. So that's the beginning. So it'll tell you what a community is, what are the key factors to make it a success. It's a foundation I think everyone should have if they're going to do this kind of work. They should know the key principles of a community. My most popular one in terms of sales was advanced community skills. This is where we looked at how to actually get in the weeds and engage people really, really well. And there's so many tiers to this that people don't even understand. Like, let's say you want to engage someone in a community, which you do all the time. It's one thing to say, hey, does anyone have any resources on this? And some people will respond and some people won't. It's another thing entirely to be like, hey, I'm struggling with this and I want to achieve this. Does anyone have any resources that have worked well for them in the past? I know, and you tag in this person, this person, this person. You might have something based on what you've shared in your past, but if anyone else can jump in, it really help. Do you notice a difference there? One is you asking for a favor for someone else. The other one is giving people this huge emotional payoff if they help you. They know they've helped you, they know why you need it. And you're tagging in some people that you know are likely to respond because you know that they're the kind of people that tend to have these resources, so they feel more appreciated as well. And this is just one example, but there's lots of examples that are like this, where there's layers of engagement skills, and too often we take things for granted and we don't really respect this. It's like sales, like sales professionals, we would all recognize there's layers to skills. But when it comes to engaging people online, we don't have the same respect, which is really a shame because there are so many levels to this and we need to get a lot better at appreciating that. So yeah, have the advanced skills. Then I have like a new program I'm running, which is AI Ready Communities, which I launched this week. This is a higher price point, I think 3 to 4 grand, but it's really helping a small group of organizations prepare their community for AI. Because at the moment, there's a lot of content, but none of it is optimized for the tools that are out there. So it's about really just embedding all the core principles in place in terms of authority, trust, taxonomy, terminology, all these things where they need to be.
You also, I believe, are one of your portfolio of activities is coaching independent consultants or founders of boutique firms. Tell us a little bit about that coaching that you do and who would be a good, sort of target client for you to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I began doing because I began getting requests for it. So it's interesting because it's a tiny fraction of like the revenue I earn, but if I'm honest, it's the most fun. The thing about a lot of the consulting work I do is that I make a recommendation and the organization might implement that in like 6 months' time. But with coaching clients, they can change their website today. They can make that change today and they can get a client tomorrow. And so that feeling when I help people get their first client or achieve their first win, like I absolutely love that. It's what really drives me to keep doing this. So I have a couple of ways that I work with people at the moment. One is they can buy hourly time from me. And that works if there's a very specific, very narrow thing that they want to solve. That's great. It doesn't work so well if they want to attract their first client. There's just too many more things that go into that. So with that in mind, I tend to have certain programs I run. So one is a 3-month coaching program where I take people through the entire journey. How to select the right niche, the right audience, how to attract their first clients, what tools to use, how to set up their website, all these things that I think are really important. What I found doing that is that for some people that works absolutely great. For other people, 12 weeks, it feels like a big commitment. Like financially, they're not always keen to make that commitment. So what I'm doing now is having more narrowly focused situations where have programs where we might just do the first part of that. Let's get you set up with the right niche, the right marketing, the right offer at the right price. If we do that, you're going to be so far ahead of most people in this space. So I've been doing that and I quite like doing that too. So the typical person, it varies a lot. I don't know if there's a typical person, but definitely people that are doing B2B. I'm not that interested in the B2C side. It's a different market and I don't really care for it, to be honest. But B2B, people that know their sector well. If you don't have a lot of expertise in your sector, then I can't help you that much. You need to have like a grounding and do what you want to do. And generally, they might not be that good at marketing. That's what I've generally found. Like they might really know their sector, they might have a lot of confidence, but yeah, they don't always have that marketing expertise, especially modern marketing, not like what you learned at college back in the 80s, like real modern marketing expertise at Sharp. So those are the people that I tend to work with. And what I found a lot is that expertise is only one side of it. A lot of the issues that people face are more psychological, like they don't feel they can charge that amount or they don't believe in themselves enough. So it's been interesting doing courses myself. So I'm currently doing my ICF, the International Coaching Federation certification, just to get a lot better at helping people through that. But yeah, a lot of it is like collaborating, being like, okay, what's the barriers that are stopping you from getting here? What are the goals you want to achieve? What's the next steps you need to take, and really guiding people in a more hands-on way. So I don't think there's a typical person, but yeah, B2B, often people that have worked in tech, but not exclusively. Definitely people that have typically worked in a large company for sure. Yeah, I'd say that's one that comes up a lot. They worked in a large company, they know the ins and outs of the industry they're in, but getting clients, keeping them, actually understanding what a consultant is, like, yeah, those are things that are a lot of fun to help people with.
So, Richard, if a listener wants to read your Substack or take one of your courses or reach out to you for some coaching or reach out to you for consulting on a community related issue, where should they go online to find you?
I would say they should go to richardmillington.com. For all the help becoming a consultant or getting set up, richardmillington.com will have everything you need there. So feel free to reach out to me, or feverbee.com if you're interested in the community side and want support. And if you just want to drop me a line, then richard@feverbee.com is great too. Yeah.
Amazing. Richard, we'll include those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on this session. It's been great to have a chance to chat to you and learn more about you. And I hope this helped.